welcome back to Farm Theory News, the UK and Ireland's #1 news show based out of a farm. This week we are going to speedrun the news because I have to go and mow silage in the next half an hour. So first of all, let's chat about the weather. Now I have actually bought myself a green screen to do it just like they do on TV, but unfortunately we don't have time for that this week, so we're just doing it the old-fashioned way with me sticking images on the screen. So this week the UK and Ireland is basking in some fantastic weather, just like I called it, because of a high pressure system which has settled over the North Sea. As we move into Sunday, we see a low pressure system moving up from the south, which displaces that high pressure system and is going to bring showers for much of the south of the UK and Ireland. And then later on into next week, there is some uncertainty as to what is going to happen. And if we look at the Met Office and we compare it to the BBC, we can see two different types of forecasts which indicate that the models are not sure about what's going to happen, and this is also reflected in the pressure charts, which means there's a chance the start of next week is going to be dry, but there's also a chance it's going to rain. So if you have any reseeding to do, if you have any silage to do, I suggest you get it done. Hence why I am going to mow straight after this episode. Next up on Farm Theory News, we are going to talk about inheritance tax, and specifically the rumoured changes to inheritance tax here in the UK and how that will affect agriculture. So before we get into the potential changes to inheritance tax, let's go through what the current rules around inheritance tax and agricultural land are. You're going to have to forgive me, but I'm going to read this off the screen. In the UK, inheritance tax is charged at 40% of the value of an estate exceeding a threshold of £325,000. However, when it comes to agricultural land, specific reliefs are available to reduce this tax burden. Agricultural property relief can provide a 100% relief on the value of agricultural land and buildings if certain conditions are met. To qualify, the land must have been used for agricultural purposes such as farming for at least 2 years by the owner, or for 7 years if it was rented out. The relief applies on the agricultural value of the property, which may be lower than its market value if the land has potential for development. Additionally, business property relief may also apply if the land is part of a larger farming business. These reliefs are aimed to support the continuity of farming operations by enabling agricultural assets to be passed on to the next generation without a large tax burden. So what changes could Labour potentially make in the autumn budget? And to be clear, this is all rumours at this point, but it's one of them things where there generally isn't smoke without fire. You can pause this video and read this big blurb explaining what the rumoured changes might be from the Labour government, but essentially the Labour government has a £22 billion black hole which they need to fill in their budget. Inheritance tax brought in £7.5 billion to the Treasury last year, so it is not insignificant. However, wealthy people with a good accountant can certainly take steps to avoid paying inheritance tax. And one of the most popular methods is to buy agricultural land so they can pass their wealth on to the next generation without paying tax. This is one of the reasons why over 50% of land sales in the UK have not been bought by farmers, but bought by wealthy businessmen. And on a personal note, the vast majority of land sales in my area are now being bought by very wealthy businessmen and not by farmers. And that comes as no surprise whenever the land price in my area of Northern Ireland is north of £20,000 per acre. No farmer, no matter how good you are, can buy land and afford to pay that off. We're not going to get into the specifics of what Labour might actually change because that's all just rumours at the minute. However, I do think there is a very strong possibility Labour will make some changes to inheritance tax and specifically agricultural property relief. In my personal opinion, there is a genuine issue with wealthy businessmen using agricultural property relief to avoid inheritance tax, and that lends credibility to the rumours that the Labour government would look to close this loophole and help address their £22 billion black hole. And what further adds credibility to the rumours that Labour might be changing something around this is if we look at other EU countries and what they do regarding inheritance tax and agricultural land. In France, there is an exemption on inheritance tax up to 75% the value of agricultural land. In Germany, you can value agricultural land which is used for farming at a lower rate for inheritance tax. In Ireland, according to ChatGPT, you can reduce the value of agricultural land for inheritance tax by 90%. In the Netherlands, the reduction is 83%. In Spain, ChatGPT just says that inheritance tax is very complicated, but in certain regions, you will have to pay inheritance tax on agricultural land. Essentially, the UK's position to have a 100% exemption on inheritance tax regarding agricultural land is unusual. We will do a special budget edition of Farm Theory News in October when the budget is finally presented. What a complicated topic. Okay, let's get on to the wee bits. This week was revealed that Defra underspent their ag budget by £358 million in just 3 years. In 2023-24 alone, they underspent by 130 million. How can you underspend when you are the government? I thought governments only knew how to overspend. Government incompetence has kept 130 million from the pockets of England's farmers. It is genuinely mind-boggling. Thankfully, here in Northern Ireland, we still just get our basic payment as a flat rate. However, unfortunately, that is set to change in the next 2 years. And just like the Department of Agriculture in England made a balls of spending the money, I have absolutely no doubt that the Department of Agriculture here in Northern Ireland will not be outdone and will also make an absolute mess of it. Sorry for the interruption, we done our TB test last week and we had one animal down and I just had to go and get it valued. Anyway, back to the actual news. This week we also got the latest viewing figures for BBC One. And it makes great reading if, like me, you dislike the BBC. BBC One suffered a record drop as audiences turn to social media for their news. The report showed that YouTube is more popular than the BBC for news as young people turn to online platforms for their information. The growth in people getting their news from YouTube from 2019 to 2024 is astonishing, and I am certain that trend is going to continue and accelerate. I may be in a dying business when it comes to farming, but doing news on social media is a business which I am 100% sure is going to flourish. And our final wee bit for this week, because I have really ran out of time at this point, is that the National Ploughing Championships are underway in the Republic of Ireland. The National Ploughing Championships are Ireland's biggest agricultural show, attracting around 300,000 visitors every year. I have never been one of them visitors, but judging by the amount of people who have asked me this year if I'm attending, I might very well go next year. After the absolute swamp that was the National Ploughing Championships in 2023, 2024 has seen some amazing weather for the event. And maybe next year if I do attend, I could attend not just as a visitor, but as a competitor in the actual ploughing championships. After all, the original mission statement for the event was to bring the message of good ploughing to all parts of the country and provide a pleasant and friendly place to meet and do business. And if there's one thing I've been told by many people, it's that I am very good at ploughing. That's it for Farm Theory News this week. Please do like, share, subscribe. Any comments, stick them down below. And it is wonderful that I can now say that this news show is more popular than the BBC News at 10. And it's also much more factually accurate, so that's a double win. And it's free, so that's 3 wins. It is no wonder that Farm Theory News is the future of news in the UK. Alright, I'm off to my 4th cut. I'll chat to you next week.